I just want my mom to stop crying. That is what the little boy said, and the whole courtroom heard it. A woman near the back dropped a coffee cup and it shattered on the floor and nobody moved to pick it up. The bailiff, who has seen everything in 30 years, stood perfectly still. I looked up from my notes and I knew right then that this was not going to be an ordinary day. I am a judge. I have sat on this bench for 22 years, and in that time I have heard every excuse and every sad story a person can tell. But I have always believed one thing. The law is supposed to be a shield for the people who need it most. I have never once apologized for believing that, and I am not about to start now. If those words are sitting in your chest the way they sat in mine that morning, then do me a small favor and press subscribe, because the story I am about to tell you is one of the ones I still carry home with me. Let me back up a little and tell you how we got there, because a Tuesday in October does not usually start with a child's voice and a courtroom gone quiet. It usually starts the way that one did, with cold coffee and a long list of cases and the small hum of people waiting for their turn with the law. The clerk, Nancy, had my files stacked neat as always. Earl, the bailiff, was checking the doors and joking with the deputy the way he always does before things get serious. The gallery was filling up slowly. A few lawyers with briefcases, a young couple holding hands, hear about a deposit their landlord never gave back, an old man who comes every single week just to watch, and nobody has ever figured out what he does for a living. Ordinary people, ordinary morning, ordinary cases. Then they called the name Vance, and the air in the room changed. Clayton Vance walked in like he owned the building, in a navy blue suit, silk tie, shoes so polished they caught the light, a gold watch on his wrist that probably cost more than the car I drive. He did not look nervous. He looked bored, like the whole thing was an inconvenience. He sat down, crossed his leg, and checked his phone before the bailiff even finished announcing the case. I gave him a moment because people get nervous standing in front of a judge, even the guilty ones. But when I asked if he was ready to proceed, he did not give me nervous. He looked up, smiled a small, tight smile, and said, "Can we move this along, Your Honor? I have paying customers waiting." I did not answer right away. I let the silence sit because silence can have a purpose. Then I said, "Mr. Vance, everybody in this room has somewhere to be. Let us all go there together, one case at a time." Clayton Vance ran a roofing company, or at least he called it his. His name on the trucks, a crew, the whole show. It turned out most of the show was borrowed. He had fired his lawyer 6 days before trial and walked in alone. And that told me he planned to fight this with charm instead of evidence. And then I looked across the room at the woman he had come to fight, and I understood what this case was really about. It was not about shingles, and it was not about money. It was about a family, and about what one person's greed can do to it. And after 22 years, I can tell you that those are the cases that matter most. Dana Carter was a housekeeper at a big hotel downtown. She worked the early shift, the one that starts before the sun, because it paid an extra $1 an hour and came with a free meal in the cafeteria. She had been doing it for 9 years. She clocked in at 6 in the morning and did not sit down for the next 8 hours, and her back ached by the end of every shift, and she never once complained about it to anybody. Her car died last winter and she could not afford to fix it and pay for everything else, so she walks to work, 40 minutes each way every single day to save the bus fare. But the first thing you notice about Dana is not her job. It is the way she holds her shoulders, like she is bracing for something, and the way she looks at her son when she thinks nobody is watching. Her son is 8 years old. His name is Marcus. Dana lived in the house her grandmother Ruby left her. It was small, and the paint was peeling, and the porch sagged a little in one corner. But Ruby had planted rose bushes along the fence 30 years ago, and Dana watered them every morning before work, even in the cold, because she said her grandmother would roll over in her grave if the roses gave up before she did. On Sundays, Dana made Marcus chocolate chip pancakes, and she let him pour the syrup, and he always made a face like he was performing surgery with it. That was the whole life right there. A small house, a good kid, a mother who walked 40 minutes in the dark so her boy could have a warm room. It was not a lot. It was everything she had. Then, on the 8th of February, a storm came through our county that tore off roofs like paper. Dana's roof was older than Marcus. The wind took a patch of shingles off the back bedroom, and by morning there was water on her grandmother's quilt. When the rain stopped, she climbed up on a neighbor's ladder to look. The damage was real, but it was fixable. It should have cost her a few $100s and a couple of afternoons. She never got the chance. The day the streets dried, the contractors came out of nowhere, knocking on doors, offering deals, saying they had leftover material from a big job and could fix anyone's roof for half price. Clayton Vance's crew knocked on Dana's door at 6 in the evening in a brand new truck, wearing high-vis vests, and they were very, very polite. Dana is not a careless woman. She asked for references. She asked for a written estimate. She did what the law tells people to do. Clayton gave her a contract dated the 12th of February, promising a full replacement of the roof, new shingles, new flashing, a 5-year guarantee, all in writing, all signed by a man named Clayton Vance. The price was $16,500. Dana did not have $16,500. She had $9,400 in savings, money she had been putting aside for years for Marcus's future, and her Aunt Vera loaned her another $7,100 because Vera believed in her, because family is what family does. On the 14th of February, Dana handed Clayton Vance the full amount. He smiled, shook her hand, and said she had made the right choice. Then, at last, the crew came. That was the 19th of March, 5 weeks after she paid. 5 men, 1 truck, and they worked exactly 1 day. They were gone by 3:15 in the afternoon. Dana walked around the side of the house after they left, and what she saw in the truck made something cold settle in her stomach. Bundles and bundles of brand new shingles, still wrapped. She took pictures with her phone and sent them to Clayton. He wrote back, "Looks fine to me. Water finds its own way." On the 21st of March, it rained for the first time since the work was done. On the 22nd, the ceiling in the hallway started to drip. By the first week of April, the wall behind the kitchen had gone dark with mold, and the smell had started to creep into Marcus's room. On the 5th of April, Marcus had an asthma attack so bad that Dana carried him all the way to the neighbor's door because the phone was cut off and she could not call 911. Walt, the man next door, drove them to the hospital. Marcus stayed 3 nights. The bills came to $2,340. He was back at the clinic on the 19th, breathing treatments, more bills Dana could not pay. She missed 9 days of work that month, 9 days with no paycheck. $486 gone. Water ruined her grandmother's quilt and the photo albums from her mother's side of the family, pictures that could never be taken again. All told, the damage to Dana's life in dollars was $19,746. That is the number I will never forget, because that number is the price of a lie. And when she called Clayton Vance to ask for a refund, he laughed at her. When she called again, he told her, and I quote, "Not my problem." When she finally understood that she had been scammed the way people get scammed every day, she did the bravest thing she could think of. She went to the district attorney and filed a complaint. 11 other complaints against him had been filed in our county over the years. 2 had settled quietly. The rest had just quietly disappeared. So here is my question for you tonight. If a stranger took everything your family had saved and then laughed at you for asking about it, what would you do? Tell me in the comments because I read them and they stay with me. The morning stretched on and a parade of other cases went by, but my attention kept drifting back to one table. Clayton Vance sat there the way a man sits at a bus stop, like he was waiting for something better to come along. And across the aisle near the back of the gallery sat Dana Carter, holding a folder full of pictures, with her son Marcus beside her, and that same straight-backed look she probably wore to work at 6 in the morning. The state called her to the stand first. Dana rose, walked up, and swore to tell the truth, and her voice shook on the word truth, just a little. Her hands were folded so tight in her lap that her knuckles went white. I have seen 1,000 witnesses do exactly that, and I have learned that the tight hands are usually the honest ones. I gave Clayton the room to question her himself, since he had chosen to stand alone. What happened next told me everything I needed to know about him. "Miss Carter," he said, strolling toward her like he was walking to his own mailbox, "you admit you never once climbed up on that roof after my crew left." "I'm scared of heights, Mr. Vance," Dana said. "I looked at it from the ground. I took pictures." "So we're here, my whole company, my reputation, all of it, over a roof you never actually inspected." He turned to the gallery and opened his hands like the case was over. "You take a man down over a guess." I leaned forward before he could take another step. Mr. Vance, her neighbor has already testified about the water damage and produced photographs taken the same afternoon. The rain does not require a ladder, and neither will you. Do you have another question, or is that all you have? Another question, plenty. He smiled his tight little smile. Miss Carter, didn't you sign that contract willingly? Nobody held a gun to your head, right? You read it, you signed it, you wrote the check. Sounds to me like a fair trade. A fair trade, I repeated, and I let the two words hang in the air. Mr. Vance, you were paid $16,500 on the 14th of February for a new roof. The crew arrived on the 19th of March. They were gone by 3:15 in the afternoon. That is 1 day of work for a job that took my own grandfather's crew a full week. Walk me through that. Weather, Your Honor, Clayton said with a shrug. We got in one good day, and then my crew had obligations at a commercial site downtown. Priorities. Business is business. I pulled a paper from my file and held it up. The weather report for the 19th of March, Mr. Vance, says clear skies and a high of 64 degrees. I checked it myself this morning. Would you like to try that answer again? With the truth this time? The room was quiet. Clayton's jaw moved once and he said nothing. Let me ask you something simpler, I said. You signed a 5-year guarantee. What does a guarantee mean to you? It means I guarantee to still be in business 5 years from now, he said, and a couple of people in the gallery actually laughed, then stopped when I looked up. In this building, Mr. Vance, a signature is a promise, and a promise has a price. I said it slowly, the way I say everything that matters. Your wife signs for the house. Your crew signs for their pay. The bank that holds the note on that truck you drove here signs for its money. Every one of those people is trusting a line on paper, exactly the way Miss Carter trusted yours. A guarantee is not a marketing slogan. It is a fact you agree to be held to. Now, answer the question again, and this time tell me what you thought you were promising that woman. I promised her a roof, Clayton said, and for the first time his voice lost its shine. She got roof work, partial, weather, scheduling, materials. These things happen in my industry. Then tell me about the materials, I said, because there is one thing I still cannot make sense of, and this is the thing. I lifted the next photograph. In this picture, taken by Miss Carter at 3:15 on the afternoon of the 19th, the truck that delivered your crew is leaving the neighborhood with every single bundle of brand new shingles still wrapped on the bed. Not one shingle off, not one nail in the wood. So I will ask you one more time, Mr. Vance, which half of the job did you finish? And then, before he could answer, the court went into recess, and I stepped into my chambers and stood by the window for a minute, because that is what the job requires on mornings like this. And if you are still here with me in this story, halfway down this road with this family, then that is worth something, and I will take 2 quick seconds of your time for it. Tap the subscribe button, the one underneath this video, so you do not miss the moment this whole thing turns. After the recess, the state's attorney, a sharp young woman named Rosa, stood up and said she had one more witness. She called Walt Kessler to the stand, and Walt came forward in his flannel shirt and his work boots, holding his cell phone up like it was a trophy. Mr. Kessler, Rosa said, you live next door to Miss Carter. Where were you on the morning of the 19th of March? Right where I am every morning, Walt said. On my porch, drinking coffee, watching the street. I've got a security camera on the corner of my eave, and that morning I pointed it at my neighbor's roof because I knew a roof crew was coming and I'm nosy. And what did your camera capture? Walt held up his phone and Rosa played it on the big screen in the courtroom, and everyone in that room watched the same thing. A truck pulling up at 9:14 in the morning. 5 men in high-vis vests lifting bundles of shingles up onto the roof, slowly, laughing, taking their time. And then, at 3:10 in the afternoon, the same 5 men carrying every single bundle back down, loading the bed of the truck and driving off. The date stamp read 3:14 p.m., March 19th. I've lived next to Dana for 11 years, Walt said into the quiet. That woman gives my dog biscuits over the fence. She helped my wife shovel snow the winter I was laid up. And she got took, Your Honor. Excuse me, she got taken. And I watched it happen on my camera and didn't know it till the ceiling fell in. Rosa did not stop there. She put the corporate records on the screen. Vance Roofing Incorporated had been dissolved on the 1st of March, 15 days after Dana Carter signed the contract. And then she played a text message recovered from Clayton's own phone, sent to a crew lead named Chris on the morning of the 19th, and the words on the screen made the whole gallery go still. It read, "She won't complain, single mom, move us to the Harris job Thursday." And then Rosa played the voicemail. Clayton's voice came over the courtroom speakers, bright and cheerful, recorded weeks after Dana's first call. "Hi, this is Clayton Vance. If you're calling about the roof, the answer is not my problem. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye." A sound went through the room like air leaving a balloon. Somebody in the back whispered, and the whispering spread, and I let it run for a moment, because the people in that gallery had a right to be angry. And then Dana Carter broke. She had been holding it together the entire time, the way she held everything together. But she put her face in her hands and she cried, right there on the witness stand, in front of everyone. And that is when her son did the thing that stopped the courtroom cold. Marcus Carter was 8 years old. He slipped off the bench beside his Aunt Vera and walked up to the rail that separates the gallery from the well of the court. And he stood there, small, looking up at his mother. Earl, the bailiff, turned to me, and I shook my head. "Let him stand." "Mom," Marcus said, and his voice was so small it barely carried, "please don't cry. I just want my mom to stop crying." I have presided over this court for 22 years. I have heard men confess to terrible things. I have heard families scream at each other across this rail. But I put down my pen and I leaned forward, and I think my voice was the softest I have ever let it be. "Marcus," I said, "do you know why your mom is crying up there?" He shook his head. "She's crying because she is brave," I said. "Brave people cry. It means she's fighting for you, and she's winning. Can you do me a favor, honey? Can you sit back down and just hold her folder for her until she's done?" He nodded, walked back to his aunt, and sat down with the folder hugged against his chest like a teddy bear. And the whole courtroom, every single person in it, let out a breath they had been holding. The clerk, Nancy, wiped her eyes. Walt blew his nose into his sleeve, and for a long moment, nobody could think of a single thing to say. Clayton Vance could. He stood up, straightened his tie, and let out a little laugh, the kind of laugh that lands wrong in a quiet room. "Your Honor, this is a very touching show. It really is. The boy wants his mom to stop crying, and I just want my life back. So can we skip the rest of the pageant and get to whatever fine you're going to hit me with? I have real customers to get back to." The gallery gasped. I have heard that gasp 100 times, but it never gets old. And I want you to understand something about this moment, because it is the reason I am telling you this story at all. In that second, Clayton Vance showed this courtroom exactly who he was, and he never had to say another word. And if that moment landed on you the way it landed on me, then please hit subscribe and ring the bell, because I want you here for the ones that come after this one, and I promise you, they get even harder. I let the silence hold for a full 10 seconds before I spoke. Then I turned to Dana Carter. "Miss Carter," I said, "under the law of this state, the victim of a crime has the right to address this court before sentencing. I want you to stand up and look at me and tell me whatever it is you need me to hear. Take your time. The floor is yours." Dana stood. She smoothed her blouse with both hands, the way she probably smoothed her apron before a shift. And when she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, and every word landed. "Your Honor, I don't have letters after my name, so I'll just say it plain. Last Tuesday night, Marcus asked me if God was mad at us. He asked me why the ceiling in his room turned black. He's 8. He should be scared of monsters under the bed, not the sheetrock over it. I told him God isn't mad at us, and I lied to my own son because I don't know whose fault this is, only that every night he falls asleep holding the edge of his blanket like it's a life raft. All I ever wanted was to give him one clean, dry room where he could just be a boy. That's all." She stopped, swallowed, and finished. "I don't want his money, Your Honor. I want my boy to sleep through the night. That's the whole of it." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the clock on the wall. Earl coughed softly. Somewhere in the gallery, a woman blew her nose. And I made a decision right there that I have never once regretted, not for a single day. "Mr. Vance," I said, "rise." He stood, and the gold watch slid on his wrist, and he pushed it back up. "On the charge of theft by deception, in that you accepted payment for work you never intended to complete, I find you guilty. On the charge of home improvement fraud, in that you promised a guarantee you had already dissolved, I find you guilty. This is my order." I read it slow because a verdict deserves to be heard. "Within 90 days, you will pay Miss Carter restitution in the full amount of $19,746. That is the $16,500 you took under false promise, the $2,340 in hospital bills for her son, the $486 in wages she lost, and the $420 in clinic copays and medication. You will pay it in full, on time, in one sum, and if you miss it by even one day, probation ends and the sheriff will introduce himself at your front door. His face went pale, and I did not stop. You will also pay a fine of $5,000 to the county fund that helps victims of fraud. Your home improvement license is suspended for 3 years. You will complete 300 hours of community service with the county housing repair program, fixing roofs for homeowners who cannot afford to fix them, under a licensed supervisor within 18 months. And you will file a written report with this court on the first Monday of every single month until it is done. I picked up the last paper. And within 30 days, Mr. Vance, you will write to Miss Carter in your own hand, 1 page, an apology with no excuse in it. She may read it, keep it, or tear it up. That choice belongs to her now. That is the part of the law that cannot be taken back from her. The gavel came down once, quiet and final, the way it always does. In the gallery, the old man who comes every week nodded, slow, one time. Dana Carter went to her son, and he stood up and wrapped his arms around her waist, and she cried. And this time, nobody in that building minded. And Clayton Vance walked out, and on the way past the rail, his gold watch slid down his wrist again, and he fumbled to fix it. And for the first time all morning, he looked exactly his age. I watched him go, and then I went home, and I made a pot of coffee, and I sat in my kitchen for a long time. Because some days the bench follows you home. And if you have followed this one all the way through with me, then let me ask you one last small thing tonight. Subscribe, so the next case finds you, and so I always have somebody to tell these stories to. There's a whole shelf of them back there waiting. 4 months later, a letter came to my chambers in handwriting I did not recognize. It was from Dana Carter. She wrote that the sheriff's deputy had knocked at her door the last week of June with a check. The restitution had been paid in full on the 71st day, within the 90 days, every cent. She used the money to hire a real roofing company, a licensed one, with a genuine 10-year warranty. They fixed her roof in 4 days. They treated the mold, and they painted Marcus's ceiling white, so white it glowed in the dark, she said, like a little piece of moon. But the part that made me set the letter down and stare out the window was the end. Marcus had stood on the porch the whole time the crew worked, watching every shingle go down. When they were done, he asked the foreman if he could keep one leftover shingle, and the foreman said, "Sure, kid." Now that shingle sits on Marcus's nightstand. He told his mother he is going to build roofs when he grows up, and his shingles will never leak, and his very first roof will be for a lady he is naming after Grandma Ruby. And then, Dana wrote, Marcus looked at her that night and said, "Mom, you haven't cried in a while. Are you okay?" And she said she told him the truth. "I am more than okay, baby. For the first time in a year, the rain doesn't scare me. Thank you for believing him." The compliance report backed up everything she said, and one line in it I will never forget. The site supervisor noted that Mr. Vance, during his community service, argued with him for a full hour to redo a patch job that had already been signed off on. "It'll leak within 3 years, Clayton told the supervisor, "and I don't hand out guarantees I can't keep anymore." As for the apology letter, Dana did not tear it up. She wrote that she keeps both letters in the drawer with her grandmother's recipe cards, right next to a quilt she is stitching out of the parts of the old one that did not mold. She says she is not angry anymore. She says she is too busy being whole. I have sat with this case for a long time now, and here is what I have come to believe. The law cannot stop the rain, and it cannot make a little boy's tears dry, but it can hold the people who profit from other people's storms, and it can hand a mother back her ceilings, and it can tell a child that the world heard him. I have heard confessions and pleas and excuses and lies in this room, but the truest sentence spoken here that year came from an 8-year-old boy who was not even under oath. "I just want my mom to stop crying." That is what justice is for. That is the whole encyclopedia, right there in 10 words. And on the hard days when the docket is long and the coffee is cold and the cases pile up like weather clouds, I still hear that little boy's voice in the air of this courtroom, right before the gavel falls. "I just want my mom to stop crying." If this story moved you the way it moved me, do me one more kindness and leave a like on your way out. And subscribe so the next story finds you before the week does. And share this one. Send it to somebody who needs to be reminded that courts are made of people too. Then tell me something honest right there in the comments. If a stranger took your ceiling and laughed at your son, what would you have done? I am not sure there is a wrong answer. I am just sure this bench heard one of the right ones. From my courtroom to your living room, thank you for sitting with me today. Be fair, be kind.